Another important key to understand who this messenger is, other than Daniel 12:1, which I already mentioned. I'm not going to go read that one. Daniel is already recorded, so you can watch that whole study if you want. In Revelation 22, we read that it says in verse 16. From verse 12, Yahushua begins to say certain things that he only says until this point, and this point is the last chapter of the entire scriptures. So the Messiah only says that he is first and last, as Yahweh says it in Isaiah. I want to make that clear. It is Yahweh who says that he is first and last in Isaiah 3 times. Yahushua never says anything like that until the very end of scriptures, when everything is fulfilled. So when first and last, first and second coming of Yahweh to this earth become one, as Zechariah 14:9 prophesies, then Yahushua says that he is both. The only thing closer to Yahushua saying that he is the first and the last, the closest thing to that, which would be that with other words, just to make clear, is when he speaks in John 10 about him being the door and the good shepherd. That means first and last. First he came as the door, then he has to come as the good shepherd to make the sheep go through the door. So that is the closest thing to saying he is the first and the last. My point is the terms, the actual terms, first and last, which in Hebrew, Rishon, Acharon. Yahushua as the first came as the Rishon, the first. When the second manifestation of Yahweh would happen, then he would appear as the last. Once the first and last are both fulfilled, then Yahushua can claim both first and last. So that's why in the 6th he says, then he said to me, in 12, and behold, I'm coming quickly, and behold, I am coming quickly, and my reward is with me, to give to everyone according to his work. I am the Aleph and the Taf, the first and last letter of the Aleph-Bet, the Hebrew alphabet. The beginning and the end, the first and the last. But then in verse 16, he says something very important. I, Yahushua, have sent my Malach, my messenger, to testify to you these things in the congregations. This is something that sadly and incredibly in Christianity is not taught. Perhaps it has been read but not understood, and it is connected to other parts that I have mentioned here. I'm not going to do it again because I might take forever, but in a nutshell, it's already recorded. In Revelation 2, when Messiah is talking to the congregations, he says to one of the congregations that he's coming to this world to fight with the sword of his mouth, and he would come through his messenger, as we see in here, because the messenger in the Hebrew culture, as other cultures in the past, but mainly the scripture and our culture, the Hebrew culture, when a messenger was sent anywhere, that messenger represented he who sent him in every way. So that's why, as Yahushua, the messenger of Yahweh the Father, came to this earth, when Philip asked him to show him the Father, Yahushua told him, if you have seen me, you have seen the Father. And that has to do with a lot of things and deeper things, like the fact that Yahweh is invisible, and the closest thing to seeing something that is the Father would be his Son, who took flesh and became an image by getting in flesh, just like we were all made in the image and likeness of Elohim. So the messenger represents he who sent him in every way. We are seeing here that Yahushua says, I, Yahushua, have sent my Malach, my messenger, to testify to you. So his Malach, the messenger of Yahushua, who would then represent him, he, which we know is Mikael, he would come to testify, meaning he would be a witness, because that's what witnesses do. they testify. So we see through here, through this verse, that the malach of Mashiach is one of the two witnesses. My malach, my messenger, to testify to you these things in the congregations. So he comes to the congregations, meaning he comes to the world and speaks to the believers to tell them what the revelation, what the true revelation is. So first, Yahweh gave the revelation to Mashiach, who sent his revelation through his malach to John, the revelator. He wrote it. But then Mashiach is telling us in the last chapter of that revelation that he would send that same messenger in the end times, as Daniel 12:1 confirms it, in order to speak to the congregations and tell them what the true revelation is, meaning explain the true doctrine as one of the two witnesses of also Revelation 11. I hope that is clear. Not only that, as I was saying in Revelation 2, when Yahweh is speaking to the congregations through Mashiach and through his malach, because the revelation is Mashiach, of Mashiach, but he sent it through his malach. So the malach is the one speaking to John, but the words he is speaking are the ones his sovereign Mashiach told him to speak, as a messenger who only says what he was told, just like Mashiach said that he only spoke to us what the Father told him. So Yahushua and the messenger who speaks to John says that he would come in the end and he would fight with those who are rebelling against the truth yet claim to be believers. For he would come to the congregations, as they say, churches, and fight with the rebellious ones through the sword of his mouth, or with the sword of his mouth, meaning through talking. Through the word of his mouth, he's going to fight with them, meaning through the true doctrine will destroy their doctrines. But they will take it as a fight. They will take it as him being mean, evil, and stuff like that for his criticism of the false doctrine. And because, as he prophesied, he comes as a fire, as a consuming fire, unlike the water of life that came as the first, through the first Yahushua HaMashiach. So Mashiach says in Revelation at the beginning of it that he would come again to the earth and fight with them in the congregations, yet they are expecting to be taken away in a rapture anytime soon. For to them it is imminent, for taking out of context certain parts of scriptures. So they believe the rapture can happen any moment, and then everything else that is said in scriptures that will happen, the plagues and everything, then that will happen. So to them they disappear, and then everything bad happens to the world, not understanding that they will be on earth during at least half, depending on who they are, half of the last 7 years, to see what is happening, the fulfillment of everything that is happening, just like Israel was in Egypt when the plagues were falling, yet they were protected. And that's how faith also was tested. So through the rapture, people that are not expecting their faith to actually be tested. And that makes the rapture actually an escape route from the truth, from reality, the reality that the scripture tells us about. Yahushua tells us that he is coming, but the one that is coming speaks and fights like the consuming fire with the sword of his mouth. So what comes out of his mouth is the sword, and we know that the sword is the word of Yahweh, and the word of Yahweh, according to Revelation 19:13, is the name of Yahushua. So the name of Yahushua, Yahushua himself, is the sword. So the one who comes is the messenger, for what comes out of his mouth is Mashiach, the sword. So even by Mashiach saying that he's coming and fighting with them with the sword of his mouth means that he's coming through his messenger. That's why the Almighty, when he reveals, Revelation 5:6, we see that he gives, or the book of life is given to the Lamb, and the Lamb takes the book in heaven at the right hand of the Father, opens the book, the first seal, and then his messenger reveals himself on earth, meaning he comes to the earth to start the ministry on the first seal, which sadly, and not surprisingly, Christians have taken as the Antichrist, the first seal being the Antichrist, which really doesn't make sense when you see it in scripture carefully. But they take verses out of context. And one of the reasons why they think it's the Antichrist is because it is the Lamb opening the first seal in heaven, so they don't make the connection with the messenger that he said he would send. So since somebody is manifesting on earth on a white horse, they think it is an Antichrist because the Messiah is in heaven opening the first seal, not understanding that he opens the first seal and his messenger finally reveals himself on this earth for the ministry. Not that he comes from heaven flying until that moment, but that he has been on earth as everybody else, born normally and everything, and then comes a time when he's given the Ruach, the Spirit, to begin the ministry, just like Yahushua received the Ruach when he was immersed by John the Baptist. Hope that is being clear. So when the Messiah, the Lamb, opens the seal, that is when the messenger whom he sent, who would be on this earth, will finally be ready to begin the ministry and preach for 1260 days until he is killed next to Eliyahu, who does pretty much the same as we see in Revelation 11. So many Christians believe that the first seal is the Antichrist because they see the Lamb opening the seal. They don't understand that the Lamb said that he would send a messenger, and that messenger is the one, the rider of the white horse, who comes to fight. They see that fight as evil because they don't understand that we are in a spiritual battle, even though they claim it because of Ephesians. But they don't see what he said verses previous to Revelation 6 when he said that he would come to fight. So they don't make those connections, sadly, so they say that the first seal is the Antichrist. They don't see this. As I just read, I, Yahushua, have sent my malach to testify to you these things in the congregations. So he comes as a witness to testify through his malach in the congregations. As I already said, it was also confirmed in the first chapters of Revelation that he said that he would come to fight with them. That's why he comes with a bow, and he is given a crown, and he comes in a white horse, meaning spiritual warfare. White, spiritual, pure horse warfare. So there are many symbols that we are given through all of these verses that I have been mentioning. And so just to finish with this part, to testify to you these things in the congregations, I am the root and the offspring of David, the bright and morning star. When Yahushua was talking to the congregation, he says that he will give the bright and morning star to the conqueror. Interestingly enough, or he who overcomes, which at the end, when it was written, it was the same word, yet in English they translated it as two different words. He who overcomes will receive this and that. And then it says, when he opens the first seal, he who is on the horse comes out conquering and to conquer. So he becomes the conqueror, which is he who overcomes. Originally, I repeat, was the same word. So he's coming conquering and to conquer, or he's coming overcoming and to overcome. So when the Messiah says he who overcomes will receive the bright and morning star, that means that the last, his messenger, will overcome, because he comes conquering and to conquer, as prophesied also in Numbers 24, that the conqueror or he who overcomes will come out of Jacob. So it is prophesied in many places, just in case. He will receive the bright and morning star. Yet we see here that Messiah is saying at the end of the whole revelation that he is the bright and morning star. But he said that he would give that to somebody else. Yet, like I said, this is the only chapter in the entire scriptures where Yahushua says he is first and last, because at this moment everything was fulfilled. So he gave as the first the bright and morning star to the last. Yet when he, as Ezekiel 37 prophesied, when they, first and last, become one, then the bright star that he gave the last is once again his, for he is one. I hope that's clear, and that's why he also says that he's the root and the offspring. When he asked as the first, when he was on this earth, and asked the Pharisees, who was Messiah's father, they said David. And he asked them, how can it be David if David himself calls him sovereign in Psalm 110? So he was saying there that he is the root of David. They thought he was the branch of David. That's why they didn't recognize him and they killed him, because he didn't fulfill the parts of the branch. He only fulfilled that of the root. He was telling them, but they were not understanding. In fact, that was the last questions that they wanted to ask, for they were so confused about the answer. And still, if you ask the same question, they will say the same thing, Christians or Jews. The fact that here he says first and last in verse 13, and now he's saying I am the root and the offspring, is because by this time he has already come as root, that would be Yahushua the first 2,000 years ago, and offspring, the last, the Malach, Mikael, as the witness like Moshe. Once he is killed also and resurrects, then first and last in a new body will be the one talking here, claiming both root and offspring. And first and last, beginning and end, Aleph and Taf. That I hope is clear.